Meshe Melendez and Layla Stewart, a woman and her 7-year-old daughter, were last seen in the quiet town of Vancouver, Washington, on March 12, 2023. What seemed like a normal disappearance at first turned out to be a tragic story full of lies, betrayals, and upsetting reveals very quickly. Kirkland Warren was at the center of this mystery. He had a troubled past, a complicated relationship with the victims, and ties to a past that made the case even more mysterious. How did Meshe and Layla get to be where they were that morning? How did a man who had come and gone from their lives for years become the most important person in this terrible turn of events? 2 people have gone missing, but this is more than that. It's a story of lies, secrets, and dark facts that has left the community and the family desperate for answers. Meshe Melendez was a single mother of a girl who was 27 years old. She loved her daughter very much and had a happy, active life. She loved sharing happy times with her daughter Layla and would often post movies of the 2 of them on TikTok. Meshe and Layla were always together, whether they were dancing, playing games, or just being silly. Anyone who saw her online knew that Layla was her whole world. Meshe's family said she had a beautiful soul and was a mum who would do anything for her kid. But Meshe's life wasn't perfect, and behind the smiles on social media, she was going through some tough personal issues. At the heart of her problems were her problems with Kirkland Warren, her ex-boyfriend. There were many times when they got back together, and times when they broke up. Even though there were clear problems in their relationship, they tried many times to make things work. Meshe had been through a lot in her life, and Kirkland was a part of it. But their past wasn't just made up of times when they got along again, it also had times when they were afraid, controlled, and violent. Meshe's 7-year-old daughter Layla was also there. She was a smart and active kid. Layla loved the company of her mother and her family and was always happy. Layla had a habit of calling her grandma often. Those phone calls made them remember how close their family was. Layla's grandma, Nicole Norris, loved her very much, and they were very close, which made Layla's childhood even warmer. Layla made her family happy, not only with her smile, but also with her clean heart. Unfortunately, the terrible events that happened would never give her heart a chance to fully grow. Finally, let's take a better look at Kirkland Warren, who is 28 years old and did the things that killed Meshe and Layla. Kirkland had a history of failed relationships, being in trouble with the law, and personal problems that got worse over time. It wasn't always true that he lived in Washington. He was born and raised in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He brought his difficult past with him all the way to the Pacific Northwest. Meshe Melendez was in a tough spot on December 13, 2022, in Vancouver, Washington. It was a position she had been in before. She was once again seeing Kirkland Warren, the father of her child, and someone with whom she had a bumpy past. There had been many ups and downs in their relationship. Though there were times when they got along, there were also serious worries about him because of his violent past. There was a fight between them that night. The exact reason for the fight is not clear, but it was enough for Kirkland to leave the flat. Meshe was feeling uneasy, so she went outside to her deck to see if Kirkland had really left. After what happened, a big event happened in their past. Kirkland shot at Meshe and hit the upper window with his bullet. The bullet just missed her. Meshe took a step back because the sudden violence scared him. She realized right away that things had turned dangerous. Kirkland had not only left, he had also made death threats against her. "I didn't tell anyone about the killing for 10 days. It's not clear why she waited so long. It could have been fear. or she might have hoped that this would be the only such event. But on December 23rd, 2022, things got even worse when Kirkland hit her. This act made things worse. Meshay chose to do something because he was hurt and felt very threatened. She called 911 and told them about the attack and the shooting that happened earlier as well. Meshay made it clear for the first time that Kirkland had made violent threats against her life. This was quickly looked into by the cops. They found proof to back up Meshay's claims. Someone who was at Meshay's flat that night and knew Kirkland for sure said that he had fired the gun. Because of this, Kirkland was charged with several crimes, such as attack and a drive-by shooting. People around Meshay and her family seemed to feel better after Kirkland was arrested. Meshay may have thought that this time Kirkland would be punished for what he did, and justice would be done. But the comfort would only last for a short time. During Kirkland's first court appearance, prosecutors told the judge that he was not only facing charges in Washington, but he was also going to be tried for a murder in Arkansas in 2017. He was suspected of killing a man and putting his body in a ditch there. Kirkland had been freed on bond, even though the charge was very serious. This shocking news showed that Kirkland had a past of violence that went beyond his relationship with Meshay. It was clear from the prosecutor's office that Kirkland was dangerous and Meshay's safety would be at risk if he was let go. Responding, the court set Kirkland's bail at $100,000 and told him not to come near Meshay or her daughter while he was free. The court's ruling gave people some hope. Meshay might finally feel safe now that she knows Kirkland will be watching her and won't be able to get in touch with her. Kirkland wasn't going to give up, though. He found ways to get in touch with Meshay while he was still in jail, even though he was told not to. Kirkland called Meshay more than once, breaking the order by making one call after another. During these calls, he went from begging to threatening. He told her she had to take back what she said and drop the charges against him. Meshay, who was still under a lot of stress, told Kirkland that she would do her best to make things better. Meshay felt like she was to blame for what was happening, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. It was a sad moment. It was clear that she was scared, and even though Kirkland was in jail, he still had power over her. When the police found out about the calls, they charged Kirkland with breaking the no-contact order and dealing with a witness. Following that, lawyers and police officers argued that Kirkland should stay in jail or at least be closely watched. One cop even said that Kirkland would have to wear a GPS ankle monitor to make sure that Meshay and her family were safe if he got out on bail. On March 8, 2023, things changed in a way that no one saw coming. Even though bail was raised and the court told them to put in a GPS ankle watch, a very important mistake was made. The monitor was never actually put in because of a mistake in the process and some problems with logistics. The new charges against Kirkland Warren were added to the main case, and the case was moved from one court to another. During all of this chaos, the important order to keep an eye on Kirkland's moves just got lost. At first glance, it looked like there was some security, but there really wasn't. Kirkland was able to pay his bail in just a few hours, and by the evening of March 8, 2023, he was out of jail, but not with a GPS watch on his ankle. Because of this mistake, Kirkland stayed free and wasn't being watched in a way that could have stopped what happened next. Things went badly for Meshay Melendez and her 7-year-old daughter Layla Stewart in the morning of March 12, 2023. They would change their lives forever. It all started on March 11, 2023, a Saturday. Meshay's ex-boyfriend, Kirkland Warren, was going to go on a trip with Layla, and even though they had a past of violence and were both under restraining orders, Meshay still found herself with him. It wasn't strange. Their cycle was hard to understand. Restraints were put in place, but then ignored. People made threats, but then they were forgiven. Kirkland always managed to get back into Meshay's life, and this time was no different. Perhaps she wished to make things better. Meshay may have dared to think he could change. They stayed at a friend's flat in Vancouver, Washington that night. The way they interacted with each other stayed tense but familiar. Meshay was either trying to keep the peace for Layla's sake or because he wanted some kind of security. Either way, this moment would mark the start of something that could never be undone. Then, around 5 a.m., Kirkland and Meshay left together. The two of them got in his red Dodge Charger and drove off. There would only be one person who could ever tell the whole story of what happened in that car and over the next few hours. At 8 a.m., 3 hours later, Kirkland pulled back into the apartment building. But this time, something was different. Meshay was still in the passenger seat, but he was lying down and not moving at all. Through the window, her friend saw her. She didn't move. She didn't seem to be awake. Craigland left and went inside before his friend could even ask what was going on. He told the friend that he was there to get Layla. It had been hours since Layla, who was only 7 years old, arrived. There was no reason for her to think something was wrong. Kirkland had been in her life for years, so she trusted him. He had been there all along. She didn't fight when he picked her up, carried her outside, and put her in the trunk of the car. There was her mother right there. It's likely that she thought everything was okay. Meshay still wasn't moving, though. Kirkland locked the door, got in, and drove off. No one saw Meshay and Layla alive after that. Not only did their family not know what was going on, but no one did. Everything would be clear after those 3 hours that morning, though. Finally, on March 18th, 2023, something didn't feel right. Meshay Melendez wasn't picking up the phone. She was always in touch with her family, which was strange in and of itself. But Layla's silence was what really set off the alarm. Layla, who was only 7 years old, loved to check in with her grandma. She would call to talk about her day, her toys, or even her kitten. Days went by with nothing. No calls. Don't text. Neither of them was seen. Nicole Norris, Meshay's mother, couldn't get rid of the feeling that something very bad was going on. That night, she called the police to say they were lost. Police went to Meshay's flat to try to find out what was going on. But when they got there, no one had been there before. No breaking in. There are no signs of a fight. Everything seemed fine. There was only one big problem. Meshay and Layla were not there. The search began the next morning. The girl's family and friends called, checked out places she would normally go, and retraced her last steps. Then, on March 19th, Nicole found out something that made her fears even worse. Mehmed's white Chrysler was stopped near Vancouver Mall. The car was just sitting there, not being used. Layla's back seat booster was empty and in the back. Why would Meshay leave her car behind if she had left on her own? Everything seemed to be going in one direction at that time. Craigland Warren was the last person seen with them. The Vancouver police moved in the same day. Getting a warrant, they went straight to Kirkland's house and arrested him there and then. Officially, they were charged with breaking the no-contact order and tampering with a witness. These charges had nothing to do with the missing person, but the police knew what they were doing. They needed time and proof. They found it after that. Kirkland's Dodge Charger, which was the last car seen with Meshay and Layla, was checked by police. They found blood on the inside. Later, forensic tests would prove that they belonged to one of the victims. People found used shell casings for different calibers under the seats. Layla's clothes and other small innocent things were thrown in the back. Meshay's ID card was also there, thrown away as a mistake. There was even more, a second car. Police did another search and found a caliber pistol hidden in the center panel. It was the same caliber as the shell casings from his Charger. All the pieces were coming together, but Meshay and Layla were still missing. Everyone in the group held their breath. People searched the area, but they could not be found. Even though Meshay's family wouldn't give up, they were afraid of the worst. Kirkland would not say a word while he was in jail. Nothing to admit or explain, just silence. It was time for answers, and they would be given soon. A worried person in Washougal, Washington, called 911 on March 22, 2023, after seeing what looked like two dead bodies in the bushes along a rural stretch of road. At first glance, they looked like dummies or dolls, but something about them seemed off, which is what made the people call the police. As soon as the police got there, they cut through the bushes and found the truth. The figures were not dummies. They were the bodies of a woman and a child that had been thrown out by the side of the road without any care. There was no time to think about it. These were the bodies of Meshay Melendez and Layla Stewart, her 7-year-old daughter. This was a very sad turning point in the probe. The search for the mother and daughter, who had been lost for days, had come to a terrible end. The news broke the hearts of Meshay and Layla's family and the whole neighborhood. As the probe went on, it became clear that this wasn't an accident. It was a planned crime. The bodies were left in the woods and hidden in the bushes, which made it look like the crime was planned. Even though the removal was upsetting, it was clear that Meshay and Layla's deaths were done on purpose. The horrible facts were proven by autopsies. Both victims had been shot and killed. Meshay had been hit once, and the bullet went through her left skull. Layla, her little daughter, had been hit in the head twice. As more information about the crime came out, it became clear how bad things were. But this story was about more than just Meshay and Layla's deaths. Because Layla's body was found in a certain way, police think she was hurt before she died. More tests proved what everyone already thought. The DNA on Layla's body matched that of Kirkland Warren, Meshay's ex-boyfriend and the last person seen with them. In addition to the violent acts, the investigation found other disturbing facts. In the days before the bodies were found, Kirkland Warren's phone records showed strange behavior. Warren had looked up on his phone things like how to get blood out of a car seat and other things that made it seem like he wanted to hide the proof of the crime. Some of the things he looked for were how to beat murder, killing the only witness, and how to get blood out of a car seat. These searches showed that someone was trying to stay hidden on purpose. More research showed that there was a financial reason. While Meshay was still alive, Warren used her phone to move $4,200 from her bank account to his own. There was already a lot of proof that Warren was involved in the crime, and this financial fraud added to it. When looked at as a whole, the evidence, from the troubling phone searches to the financial transactions, made the picture very clear. People didn't just do this out of anger. They planned it out ahead of time and were violent while also being very careful not to be caught. People in the neighborhood and the investigators were still trying to figure out what had happened. What began as a search for a mother and daughter who had gone missing turned into the finding of a planned and intentional act that killed someone and hurt them deeply. Since March 17, 2023, The search for Michelle Melendez and her daughter Layla Stewart had been getting more serious. The police were already putting together pieces of evidence that linked Kirkland Warren to the crime, but what they were about to find made things even more mysterious. Kirkland Warren had a very bad past, and it wasn't until Michelle and Layla's deaths that the whole truth about it came out. He had been convicted of crimes for many years, and there was a trend that couldn't be ignored. The boy Kirkland grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where his dad was a city judge. In 2009, his father quit his job because he was accused of wrongdoing, such as forgery and attempted theft. These early signs of trouble set the stage for what would happen to Kirkland. There was a lot of violence, but it wasn't known how bad it was until a long time later. In 2017, just a few years before he moved to Vancouver, Washington, Kirkland helped kill Curtis Card, who was 57 years old. It was found that Curtis had been shot in the head and left in a ditch. Craigland was 22 years old at the time. His friendship with Curtis was tense because Curtis was said to have been demanding money from him. When Kirkland declined, the argument got worse, and he got violent, shooting Curtis in the head and then throwing away the body. From this case, it was clear that Kirkland used violence to solve problems. Even though these facts point to Kirkland's guilt, he was freed on bond for the 2017 murder charge. His bond was set at $250,000. The case seemed to fade from public view over time. In spite of this, Kirkland did not forget about his illegal past. He kept breaking the law, in fact. In 2020, he was looked into for having a stolen semi-automatic firearm. The police took the gun away from Kirkland, but he still didn't care about the law. He lied on an application to buy another semi-automatic handgun in 2021, saying he wasn't wanted for a crime. Even though the application was turned down, Kirkland still got a gun. This gun would later be a big part of the terrible things that happened next. When the search for Michelle and Layla began, Kirkland had already been linked to their case by the police. It became public that he had a criminal past that included the murder in Arkansas. Now the puzzle pieces were beginning to fit together. The killings of Michelle and Layla were linked to the violence he had shown in the past, and the police couldn't ignore the trend. When these links were found, they led to more questions. In what did Michelle and Layla take part? What role did Kirkland's past of violence play in the events that led to their deaths? As the police dug deeper, they found troubling clues that showed Kirkland had a financial reason for what he did, as well as a violent temper. Monet Tyler Warren, Kirkland's wife, got involved in a crime plot in November 2022, not long before Michelle's death. This plot would later link her to Michelle. Monet was the focus of an investigation into theft at her job at a bank in Portland, Oregon. She was charged with taking a total of $25,000 from customer accounts by changing account information and moving the money to other accounts while she was working. But that wasn't the end of the plan. Soon, police found out that Monet had changed account information for a much bigger amount, $220,000, using her credentials. The money was moved into an account that Michelle Melendez owns. It was proven by surveillance video that Michelle had been to the credit union during the theft, and it looked like Michelle and Monet were both involved in the crime. However, it was unclear whether Michelle knew the whole plan, and there was no denying the link between the two women. In the end, Monet revealed that she had changed the accounts because her husband Kirkland had asked her to help him move the money. There was already a lot of trouble in Michelle's relationship with Kirkland. Violence, threats, and protection orders, and now this added to the list. So, in September 2023, just a few days before his hearing, Kirkland Warren made an important choice that would change the course of his case forever. He admitted that he killed Mache Melendez and her daughter Layla Stewart, who was 7 years old. He also admitted to molesting children, but in a way that made a lot of people uncomfortable. At first, Warren said she had nothing to do with the talks with the police. He tried to lie and told a story that no one believed. He insisted, against all chances, that Mache had killed the people during a fight over a gun. Of course, that was quickly shown to be false. There was no doubt in the evidence. It pointed straight to Warren. The truth of his situation became clear as the weight of his deeds pressed down on him. Warren could have been put to death or given life in prison, so he decided to make a deal. This made things more difficult, though. An Alfred plea was what he did when it came to the charge of abuse with Layla. That's a legal move where the defendant doesn't say they're guilty, but agrees that there is enough information to convict them. It was a weak move to protect his reputation, but it didn't change what would happen to him. When the day finally came, October 8th, 2024, it was time for the sentence. The family of Mache and Layla, who were very sad, crowded the courtroom. The air was heavy with sadness, and everyone in the family could see their pain. A lot of people wore t-shirts with Mache and Layla's happy faces on them to remember what had been lost. Some family members didn't hold back when they were angry. They looked at Kirkland Warren straight in the eye and told him they hoped he would suffer in jail all the days of his life. The truth was shown, and it broke my heart. But he knew that Mache and Layla would never come back, no matter how long he spent in jail. The judge who was in charge of the case also didn't hold back. He recognized that Warren's actions had caused unbearable pain. He knew that the sentence couldn't erase the horror or bring back what had been lost. Anyone in the courtroom was quiet because they were all waiting to hear what would happen next. The sentence was life in jail, without the chance of parole. That was it. Warren would never be able to walk freely again. As a result of killing 2 innocent people, a mother and daughter were cut off from their family for good. It was fair, but no one left the courtroom feeling like the world was right again, even though the case was over. It was too late to fix the harm. While Warren was being taken away in handcuffs, his fate was sealed. His family stayed behind. They were still sad, but they felt like the end of the story was near. They fought for justice, and it was done in the end. But they would all learn that justice could never fix the wounds that were made. The deaths of Mache and Layla would always be in their minds and hearts. Now let's really think about what the criminal justice system did in the terrible case of Mache Melendez and her daughter, Layla Stewart. A lot of important questions are raised by this case, especially about bail and the problem of repeat criminals. Kirkland Warren was given bail more than once, even though he had a background of violence that included a murder case and an assault charge. This isn't the only case like this, and it makes you wonder, did the system do enough to figure out how dangerous he was? When someone with a dangerous past is released on bail, should there be stricter rules? In this case, Warren was charged with major crimes, but was let go without being arrested. So it makes you wonder if there should be more protections, more oversight, or even a re-evaluation of the bail terms, especially since the suspect has such a bad past. The criminal justice system has to find a way to keep everyone safe, while also giving the accused a fair chance. But this case makes you wonder if the machine missed something. Then, there are orders for domestic harm. Mache had a court order to stay away from Warren, but he still reached out to her. This brings up another important moral question. How well do these legal defenses really work? You know that restraining orders are meant to protect you, right? They're meant to keep Mache and other people safe, but they don't always do what they're meant to do, which is protect you. Warren was still able to get in touch with the person, even though there was a court order stopping her. This brings up the important question of whether or not restraining orders are sufficient to protect victims. We may need to consider taking extra steps to better police these orders. This could mean tighter monitoring or some other type of follow-up checks to ensure that people who are at risk are not left open to harm. No one is saying there's a right or wrong answer to this tough question, but situations like Mache's make it clear that we need to keep talking about it. These are the kinds of things that can make us really think about how we deal with domestic violence, the criminal justice system, and how well our laws protect us. There is some safety in the law, but it's clear that more could be done to really keep people safe. This is something to think about. The sad story of Mache Melendez and her daughter Layla Stewart is now over. We can't help but think about how much evil there is in the world and how safe the people who need it the most are. That's all for this case. If you want to see more true crime stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.